So, I mean, it sounds woo-woo when we talk about energy work, or, some people have a different impression of what it does, or visualization, but it's all actually just how we work. Energy is how we move. And I think it's harder for us to explain it because we can't see it. And we're really used to talking about things like germs. You can't see germs, but we know they exist. In the same way, we can't see this energy, but we know that it exists.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I am Julie Dean Richards, and today I am so excited to be joined by one of my best friends, Allie Duzett. She has agreed to chat with us and talk about one of her specialties, which is energy work. And we'll be hearing more from Allie later this year. But today, I just wanted to talk about energy work because so many people don't know what it is. They don't know how it connects to the feminine. They don't know how it connects to science. A lot of people think it's kind of woo-woo nonsense. So today, Allie, I want to dispel some of that and just tell people, like, what is energy work? So to start, do you want to say hello, and then you could tell us a little bit about how you got into energy work?
Yeah. Okay. So I use energy work every day in my life nowadays, although it is a little bit of a fraught term, as you mentioned. I guess my first introductions to energy work were certainly before I became a practitioner. When I was 16 years old, I moved out of my parents' house all the way across the country to start college, and I moved in with my aunt to do that. And once I moved in, I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep anymore, and I didn't really know why. And my aunt told me it was anxiety. And I thought, well, I don't really feel anxious, so I don't know. I just can't sleep. I just lay in my bed and can't sleep. And she said, I think we should try something. And she had been studying some kind of energy work. I'm not even really sure what she did, but she had like a whole little room set up, and I laid down on her couch, and she kind of did muscle testing. I didn't know what muscle testing was at that time, but she did this muscle testing and identified some emotions. And she said, I think that you feel really angry. And I said, I don't know. I don't really feel a lot of anger right now, but okay. She said, I think there's anger stored in your forearm. And she pointed to this muscle. And as soon as we identified this anger, it was from when I was 7 years old, and this incident with my disabled brother, this muscle on my forearm popped up and it started shaking really, really fast. It hurt so bad. It was like a Charlie horse. And she was like, breathe through it. And I like breathed through it until the muscle stopped shaking and it went back to normal. And I felt like a whole different person. I felt like a huge weight of anger had come out of my body. It was like stuck in my muscle. It suddenly became unstuck in a very dramatic fashion. And then I could sleep. So that was really interesting. And I didn't really know what to make of it. We did some sessions like that as she was getting her certification, but that was certainly the most dramatic event for me. And then some years later, when I moved back in with my parents to help take care of my disabled and dying brother, he was on hospice at that time, and a hospice worker, we'd gotten him approved for massage. And this hospice worker came in and she would not massage him. She would just hold out her hands and kind of hover her hands over his body, and he would go to sleep. And this was really shocking because part of his condition was that he was clinically unable to create the architecture of sleep. So in his whole life, he did not really ever sleep, but when she would hover her hands over his body, he would go to sleep. And I was absolutely flabbergasted at this. And I said, oh my gosh, whatever this is, you have to teach me. Like, I need to be able to do this for my brother. So she taught me this form of hands-on healing, where you just kind of hover your hands over the person, you kind of breathe and like flow the energy into their body. And it sounds silly and ridiculous, but I will tell you, it absolutely works. The day that I learned it, I went to a hospice class for hospice workers and me, and we all learned about this hands-on healing. So I learned it, and then they said, practice makes perfect. You can't just know it. You have to practice, 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 and that's what makes you good at it. And I came home, and the next day, my mother had slipped and fallen on some ice, and she had bruised her entire leg, ankle to hip. And it was like black and blue, and she couldn't bend her knee, which was a problem because the next day she had scheduled a flight to somewhere, and she had to go on this business trip, and she was going to have to walk and like drag her suitcase and do the airport thing on this leg that couldn't bend. And so I took an hour and I put my hands on her leg and I like breathed and flowed the energy, and I didn't even hardly know what I was doing. But the swelling went down, and at the end of that hour she could bend her knee again, and she was able to walk without incident at the airport the next day. And she reported that after that she really had no pain. You know, she saw the bruising and it went away over time. It's not like you like magically have it disappear immediately, but I don't know, a bruise like that, her entire leg was like black and blue, and then she was suddenly able to bend her knee. But I just had so many experiences like that using that hands-on technique, which is a form of using energy to help heal the body. So the mechanism of what is really happening, if we think of it in terms of like Chinese medicine, where the Chinese call the body's energy qi. So you've probably heard the term of qi before. And the idea is that when everything is healthy, your qi is flowing and it's just in this beautiful state of flow. And when things are not healthy, then it becomes stagnant. And stagnation is always a problem. We never want that. And that's what you could say bruises are, or any kind of physical health problem. When you have a physical health problem, you have a stagnation in your qi associated with that body part or that body area. And it's kind of like this two-way street. So if you slip on the ice and you slam your leg into the ice, then you can have all that qi on your whole leg freeze. And it kind of like paralyzes, and without that flow, you're going to have a health issue. But also, if you have an emotional problem that causes your qi to stop flowing, then you can have a physical problem show up as a result. Conversely, so say you have this terrible phone call, somebody calls and tells you this terrible news, and you feel like your heart stops, and you're like, oh my gosh. And there's this element of paralysis and this element of stagnation. The chi stops moving. And then maybe your heart hurts. I mean, like we've all heard of people who have a heart attack after a shocking emotional event, or we have these different emotional things happen, and then we end up with these cascade of health issues. Particularly, you're probably aware of all the studies that show that people with chronic pain and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, these kinds of things, often have histories of chronic and extreme trauma, like emotional trauma, and then their bodies are also exhibiting these symptoms of energetic trauma. And so the fun thing about energy work is that it's just a method that you can use to unstick that chi and get it flowing again. So if you have a physical situation like a bruise, you just got hurt somehow, you can flow energy into that area and notice sometimes immediate improvements in the physical health issue. But also if you have an emotional issue that is linked to physical problems, then by addressing the emotional root of the chi stagnation, then it can smooth out that flow as well. And I just love that. So we kind of have a couple different ways that you can approach the energy of your body. You can approach it physically with a hands-on kind of thing, or you can approach it emotionally and work through the emotions but still see positive effects in the physical body. So if it's all right, can I guide everybody on a really quick exercise that they can just do on their own?
Yes, we'd love that.
Okay, everybody, I want you to rub your hands together. And this is just to wake up the nerve endings in your hands. It's not actually necessary, but when you're first getting started, it's really helpful to do that. Okay, and I don't know if you ever did this as a child. What you're going to do is bring your hands in and out together and see if you can feel the little squish of energy in between your hands, and see if you can kind of stretch it out and compress it. And if you have trouble feeling it, a couple different things can be contributing to that, but I would recommend just tapping on your palms and rubbing your hands some more to wake everything up in there and see if you can feel it. That energy that you are feeling, that little squish, is your own body's energy field. So one really nice way to practice with this is over your own eyes, where you're going to cover your eyes with the palms of your hands, and take your deep breaths, take off your glasses if you need to. You don't need to press on it. You don't even really need to touch it, but it feels good to touch it. And you're going to take some good deep breaths there, very slow. And imagine light all the way from Heavenly Father, from our Creator, flowing down into your hands and then into your eyes. And just feel that light flowing in while you breathe. Just imagine picturing it flowing. And so this is a very simple exercise, and you can do it as long as you want. And you can do that with any body part that you want. So a lot of times what you might find is you start here and you might feel a little tingle over here or over on your knee, and you just move your hands and breathe and flow that light in there. And that is like the most simple kind of physical body healing work that a person can do. It is basically that simple. You really can't mess it up. And what I find is that if you really want to test it out, go try it for a full hour, set a timer, and just say, I am doing nothing but putting my hands on my own body or on this other person's body, and I'm just going to breathe and imagine light is going into their body under my hands for a whole hour, and just see what happens. It's pretty straightforward, and you can see some really miraculous stuff come from just that.
That was beautiful. Thank you for doing that with us. It's so much fun to have you explain that. I loved a lot of your explanation for people because a lot of people don't understand what energy work is. I would love to dive in to a little bit more of the science around it. Is that okay? If we can dive, which would be perfect, because if people don't know, Allie and I talk like almost every day. And yesterday we talk about things like the morphic field and morphic resonance. So you're getting a glimpse into what we talk about in our daily lives, which is really fun. We love to talk about these deep ideas, but I think one of the biggest hangups people have, especially people who come from more of like a traditional Christian background, is this idea that energy work is bad or it's evil or you're using spirits to do something. So that's why I'd like to talk about a little bit of the science behind it, because it's not this thing where we're using spirits to heal you or we're using these odd things. It's very much, this is actually something that has been studied. It's something that we see in frequencies. We can see it in plants, animals. Like, it's not as foreign as we think that energy work is. So I know you talked a little bit about chi. I know in some of your classes you talk about prana and all of those pieces to it. But if you would like, I know this is a very open-ended question and I'm asking you to just like pull from all the things. Can we talk about some of the science behind why does energy work? Because not all of it is just hands-on. A lot of it is imagery based, and that has kind of its own way that it works. So let's talk a little bit about the science behind it.
Yeah, sure. So I really view the work that is possible with energy work, the healing physical body effects that we see with energy work, as originating with Einsteinian quantum physics. That's really what we're working with here, is quanta, the subatomic particles, okay, which sounds like crazy talk, but we'll dig into it. Okay, so in your atoms you have your proton and your neutron and your electron, and hopefully everybody can imagine the old diagram of atoms that we all grew up with. I understand that now they have new diagrams, and those diagrams are out of favor, but for our purposes, we can understand atoms in that way. And we know that all objects on this earth have more space in them than matter. So your body actually has more emptiness in it than stuff in it. And same with this table and this wood over here. All of it is actually more emptiness than it is stuff, okay? We are all mostly empty space. So within an atom, we have that proton and neutron and the electron is the thing that we are really working with on a scientific basis here. If you're familiar with the works of Einstein, he referred to the ability of electrons to exist in multiple places at the same time as spooky action at a distance. Spooky action at a distance is one term for it. We can call it quantum entanglement or quantum entrainment as well. And it is this idea that all electrons have the ability to be in multiple places at the same time. So when you're working with energy in your house, I just had an electrician come. We had a bunch of electrical issues in our kitchen, and so he had to come and rewire the energy of my house. And remember, remember that your electronics work via electrons, okay? And this flow of literal energy, okay? And we are all electronic beings. We are electric beings, and all of our cells function based on their voltage. And the electronic voltage of our cells is what determines the rate at which our cell walls open and close. That's like what makes our bodies function, okay, on a cellular level. And so when we are dealing with chi stagnation, we're dealing with a stagnation in our energy field, we're dealing with a stagnation in our electrons, in our own electron signature. And when we are intentionally altering that electron signature through like touch or even just through acts of the mind, even things like prayer, to me, that's how prayer works. We are using our own power as conscious beings to use our own atoms, our own electron signature to petition a change in the total electron signatures of all the stuff around us. And it's causing changes on this subatomic level that then ripples outward to become bigger changes over time and sometimes instantly, depending on what the situation is, you know? But to me, that is how it all works. So in my own work, so you mentioned that I do a lot of work with guided imagery, which is kind of similar to hypnosis, but not really. In hypnosis, you have to go into state and you need your dark room and you're alone and you can't be disturbed and you have to like make your brain be in a different kind of brain space. And the work that I do is not like that. My work is more like a podcast. When people go through my sessions, it sounds like what I sound like right now. And I just talk to you and I say, okay, everybody, imagine this kind of situation and use your brain to resolve this situation that we imagined. And what people find is that doing that actually often leads to physical health changes and or emotional health changes. So just the simple act of using your brain to create images and resolve those images on a symbolic level, it is entangling with the electrons involved on all levels of this problem and helping them resolve. We're helping the whole thing shift on kind of this electric level. That's what we're really working with is electricity, electrons, energy in the most literal sense of the word, like the energy that runs your house, you know, the energy you get from a solar panel. It's all the same energy. And it's just a matter of how are we using that energy to alter the function of the atoms in play with whatever situations are involved.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect start. And I would say that everything has its own electronic signature. Like you have your own electronic signature, so do I. And that's why you can feel someone's presence when they come into the room. You can feel what they're doing. And this is part of the reason that things like meditation work also. There was just a study published with Dr. Joe Dispenza showing what we have known and what has been shown over and over and over again in studies that meditation and visualization, like Allie is saying, can actually change your physical being and your physical form. And I think like one of the simplest ways to understand how this works is like if I say to you like imagine eating a lemon, you might salivate when I say that because a lemon is very sour. And so that sour activates your saliva, your glands, and you start making changes. Your body makes changes based on what we think. And we all know this because we've had this where we're daydreaming about something and our body makes changes. If, you know, we feel excited, we feel scared, we feel anxious, and it changes the way that our body works. We can also see this in nature, like, for example, the way that bees pollinate flowers. The way that bees can know that a flower has already been pollinated is because of the signature, the electronic signature of the flower. It changes after the pollen has been taken. There's negative ions now, so the bee won't have anything to stick to. So the bee stays away from those flowers. So, I mean, it sounds woo-woo when we talk about energy work, or, you know, some people have a different impression of what it does or visualization, but it's all actually just how we work. Energy is how we move. And I think it's harder for us to explain it because we can't see it. And we're really used to talking about things like germs. You can't see germs, but we know they exist. In the same way, we can't see this energy, but we know that it exists. So just putting that out there for people who might be afraid of it. I did want to ask you also along this tact, if you would be willing to share, because I have done your sessions before myself, and I've had like so many amazing results from all the different kinds of sessions that you do. But for people listening, can you give us an idea of like some of the cool stories that have happened from people doing energy work with you?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to. But first, I do want to invite us all to do another quick exercise to feel what I'm talking about, the stagnation in your own energy field. And then while you're feeling it, then I can tell you some of the cool stories. But if you rub your hands together again and do that kind of energy squish, one thing that I love to have people do is to scan themselves, or if you have another person around that you're willing to that is willing to let you scan them, you kind of hover your hand over their body and you're going to go so slow, very, very slow, and you just hold your hand right over and breathe very slowly and just notice what changes you notice as you hover your hand over the body and scan it. If you have an injury, that is particularly what I want you to scan. I don't think I have an injury right now, and also you couldn't feel it from my own body anyway, so I can't really demonstrate on that. But if you have a bruise, if you have a sore knee or something, I want you to just scan the area around it and then over it, and notice how the energy in that area is going to feel actually thicker. It's going to feel a little bit sticky. Okay. And it will be very subtle. It will be something that will take a little bit of concentration to notice. But once you notice it, you will be able to kind of go back and forth. Like, say I have a wrist injury, you will be able to go back and forth and feel the line where the stickiness of the energy starts and where it stops. So that is just a really fun way to demonstrate to yourself that this is actually a thing. So anyway, go experiment with it, because it's like kind of fun to get used to feeling this energy. And also, one thing I wanted to say, when you talked about how you can feel it when people enter the room, that like this is the the makeup of vibes. When people have a certain vibe, what it is their electron signature and how it's interacting with your electron signature. And so the people that you easily get along with have electron signatures that mesh well with yours, and the people who you naturally like want to get away from, they have electron signatures that don't mesh well with yours. But the other thing I wanted to say about that is, if you've ever had that experience where you knew you were being watched, you knew it. I feel like that is a great example of how sensitive our bodies are to energy, because why would you ever know that? Like there is no explanation for it except that this stuff is real. And I think we've probably all had experiences feeling watched, and then you turn and like know that you were being watched. This is kind of a fun thing to practice if you can be the watcher and see people learn that they are being watched, where you just like pick your target and you just stare at them and you just like focus all of your energy that you've got at this person's back, and they will turn around and want to see what's going on, because we can all sense each other, because all of our energy fields are quite powerful. Okay.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. I do have one thing to say on that too, because as you're going over this, and this is something we talk about on the podcast a lot, it makes me think too, though, I wonder if part of the reason some people have such a hard time with this is we have lost connection with feeling our own bodies. We're so in our heads. Lots of times we're often watching our phones, TVs, things like that. Sometimes I think that those electronics can kind of mess with our own electronic signature. And that's part of the reason that it's harder. So if people who are doing Allie's exercise and you're like, I'm having a hard time feeling the difference, it might be because you haven't been in your body or paying attention to your body for a while. Do you find that that happens to people?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. If you're not used to feeling your own body, this exercise is kind of interesting because you feel your body from both your hands and from the part that you're scanning. You feel it from here and from here, and you're kind of feeling it from here, and you're kind of feeling it from here. So that's a lot to kind of be thinking about at the same time. A lot of times also, I find that people have stagnant energy in their hands. And if your hand energy itself has a chi blockage, that's where it gets really tricky. It's hard to sense another chi blockage if this is blocked. So the first step is going to be opening up any blockages in the hand energy. And so one easy way to do that is to do like this kind of spiral action over your palm. And you will see if you do this that the energy feels different if you spin counterclockwise or clockwise. And that's a great way to kind of shake it up, move it around. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I would say those three things, the three things of hand energy stagnation makes it hard to sense energy. Not being used to feeling our bodies makes it hard. And yeah, being distracted can make it hard. Okay, fourth one, like our electronics are distracting and everything, but they also are running on electricity as well. So like sometimes sitting out in nature away from your electronics can be more helpful to help you kind of get into a zone where you can more easily sense this kind of thing. So thank you for bringing that up. That's all very important stuff. Well, and right now, Julie has been spending a lot of time in nature. And so I bet that has really upped your own sensitivity. Has that been true, if I can ask?
Well, yeah, it has in many ways. Well, I notice it most with my eyes, actually, which is the most interesting thing because I wear glasses and I have been trying to heal my eyes actively. But to heal your eyes, people are going to be like, you can't heal your eyes. You can heal your eyes. I promise. There's legitimate studies on this. But to do it, you have to take your glasses off a lot and you have to live without your glasses. And the more that I find that I'm inside, the more I feel like I need glasses because I can't see as well because I don't get as much light. And then the more that I'm outside without my glasses, the better that I feel. But I do notice my eyes, how they feel are much more sensitive than I thought. I didn't realize how tired they are or how much they're working until I was in this situation where I'm in nature more and feeling my body. So I definitely have noticed huge shifts. And of course, I'm about to have a baby, so I'm feeling all those shifts too. So in my body, so I've been very conscious of it. And so I would just say that this works. What Allie is saying, it works. The more you tap into your body, the more it works. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like some of those amazing stories? Because I know a lot of the cool stories, but lots of people need to hear it because it's just way too cool. And I know it's going to be, people will be like, well, this is anecdotal, but like all of science is actually anecdotal when you get down to it. It really is. And pack of stories, like Allie and I were talking about this the other day, that so many people are unwilling to accept anecdotal evidence. And like you can say that about one person's story, but when there are thousands and thousands of the same story, of the same thing over and over again, that is something we need to take notice of and is oftentimes more reflective than what we might see in some of these bigger studies because of the variables involved. Anyway, sorry, the researcher in me is like, let's get deep into this and talk about it. But Allie actually has hundreds and hundreds of stories. So I feel like you are a great test case for a lot of these. Like there's more anecdotal evidence here that needs to be paid attention to because it literally is thousands of stories.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is making me want to just like collect a huge collection of my stories. I've never done that. I just opened up my website on the back end. So I run this massive library of guided imagery sessions on all kinds of issues, physical health issues like knee problems or hip problems or stomach problems, whatever. But then I also cover a lot of emotional issues like betrayal or frustration or anger, because again, all of our emotional issues can be linked to physical health problems, and all of our physical health problems can be linked to emotional problems. And so I use this guided imagery to help people use their own powers of imagination, their own powers of visualization to clear out the emotional issues that are linked to their physical problems. And in many of my sessions, I have it required that they have to leave a little anecdote about what happened and like their experience. I have 29,548 unread of those. I haven't even clicked on them. Oh my gosh. But that doesn't even count all the ones that I have clicked on. So we're talking about tens of thousands of people's stories, which I don't know. I didn't know that we were going to be going into that today. So I don't have any right off the top of my head, unless you have a great story that you can think of. But I'm going to just pull it up and see what people are saying.
Well, that's a legitimate case study. Like 29,000 replies, right? That's legitimate research worthy. We need to go through these, Allie. We have to do something with this and publish it, actually.
I know, I need to. Okay, these are all going to be anonymous. This is from the Sexual Abuse Healing. She says, when I first hit play to listen to this session, my stomach immediately started hurting and feeling sick. I quickly told my little self that I'm safe and I'm okay, to trust in me to heal this. Only a few minutes into the session, the pain disappeared. I feel like I have a lot of generational trauma here as well as my own. I felt protected the whole time and a light filled me. I know I will need to come back through this again and again, but I am not afraid anymore to face this. Wow. Okay. So I love that. I love that it shows how this kind of work, it kind of seems like mental or like imaginary, but she had a physical body reaction to it. And then the physical body reaction subsided, and she had both an emotional and a physical, I don't know how to put it, like a positive experience where her fear cleared. She is not afraid to face the abuse that she dealt with in the past. And when she is facing it, her body is feeling calmer, filled with light instead of filled with terror and pain. Okay, I love that.
Can I jump? I'm just going to jump in here because I think that's such a beautiful example, and I'm sure you're going to read more of those too. But I did want to say that something I've noticed is even when people complain to you, they complain because they have results. So like the one I'm thinking about is the weight loss one, because Allie has one on weight loss and helping with people. And someone complained to her and was like, they did it for 1 week. So they did, I think like 1 or 2 sessions. I can't remember how many it was, but they did it for less than a week. And they were like, I only lost 8 pounds this week. I only lost 8 pounds. I should have lost more weight from doing 2 energetic sessions with you, but I only lost 8 pounds. Like how even when people complain to you, 8 pounds is amazing. I wish I could lose 8 pounds in 1 week. Like that is fantastic. But the fact that they complain that that's all that they lost doing your energetic sessions, when people would think that energy work can't help you lose weight. Well, it can. It definitely can. It helped me 2 years ago. I lost 60 pounds, and part of that was doing Allie's sessions. So it definitely works. But anyway, even when people complain to you, it's like about their results, which is hilarious to me.
That's true. That was a hilarious one. Well, she was quite overweight, and she just said, well, at this rate, even if I lose 8 pounds a week, it's still going to take me 2+ years to get to my goal weight. And I'm like, well, honey, how long did it take you to get where you are? Like, I'm sorry, it's going to take some time. It all just takes time. But yeah, I forgot about that one. That's hilarious. Okay, let's see. Here's one from my anger series. Well, I have some really good ones from that. I had hoped to feel things get better, but I've been pleasantly surprised to experience a much bigger shift than I expected. It feels so good to get anger out of my heart. I feel like I can function so much better and think so much more clearly. Yeah, I love that one. I feel like most people experience kind of like the more subtle shifts of suddenly feeling emotionally a lot lighter and like their minds kind of clear and they can think clearly because they are no longer bogged down by the old memories of stuff. So what I find is that the body, maybe you've heard of that book, The Body Keeps the Score, which I actually haven't read, but I understand that the purpose of that book is to explain that your body contains a physical record of everything that's happened to you. And if you have not resolved your past trauma, then it will continue cascading on your body. It will continue weighing on your body and it will cause actual real problems. So when we are clearing out these different emotional backdrops that are kind of underlying everything that's going on with our bodies, it's opening up the space for physical healing and for our brains to just feel lighter and so that we can just think clearly. When my grandfather died, I was so sad. But now at this point, both of my grandfathers died, and both times I was so devastated. I love my grandpa so much. And I just couldn't even think. I remember like lying in my bed, I'd stare at the wall for hours and I just stare at it. Probably a lot of people who have had like grief have had this experience where you just like sit there and your whole system is just kind of like, it doesn't really get it anymore. Like something has snapped within you and you just sit there and you can breathe kind of, but even that seems like hard work sometimes. But here's the thing, all of us are carrying some levels of grief from past events that are affecting us on some level like that. So I kind of feel like when we do this kind of work, it works like a computer when, every tab is open and they're all taking this energy and stuff. And this work, what it really does is it closes the tabs and it's like a little section of your brain has been fixating over that time that your second grade teacher made fun of you in front of the whole class and you felt like a little bit embarrassed for the whole rest of your life ever since, like, close, we don't have to think about that ever again. It's done. We're removing that from our bodies. And now you can think a little bit more clearly and you can move forward with a little bit less fear because you're not constantly feeling the stress of that second grade experience anymore. We move on and I don't know, it opens up our minds. It opens up our whole souls. I don't know. I just think it gives us a big opportunity to clear out a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I love the idea of the tabs being open because sometimes people don't realize how much they're carrying from their childhood and how huge that is, and also how much they're carrying from their family line, which is something I did want to talk about, but let's talk about some more of these stories. I do remember with this anger session too, people passing actual like stones from them after doing this session. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So, okay, all of our emotions are chemical in origin. Like, if you feel angry, that's because there's a chemical reaction going on inside of your body that is creating the literal chemicals of anger that your body is feeling. And if you don't give a full expression to your feelings, like you bottle them up, you like cram them on down, when you do that, sometimes those molecules can get stuck in your actual tissues, and that can be what is causing your problems, is that there's a backlog of weird chemicals that's stuck in your elbow and now you have this mystery elbow issue or whatever. Yeah, so the liver is the guy that's in charge of manufacturing the chemicals of anger. So when people have done my anger series, sometimes literally like when they go to the bathroom, they are passing bilious stools that hurt on the way out and burn, and they are sometimes passing liver stones. The thing that I really hear that a lot from is my liver series, which is it's like a spiritual liver cleanse. And we talk about anger and we like work on the energy field of the liver, but people have actually literally pooped out liver stones after taking it. And so, yeah, I have a ton of these weird stories, and I like, when I'm on the spot, I'm like, I don't know, I can't think of anything. But now that you're mentioning it, I'm like, oh yeah, we've got a lot of that. That's true. We've got a lot of crazy stuff like that.
Or even helping people see. I know there was that one woman who that doctor came to you and was like, I can't do anything for this lady, but I know you could do something for her and help her see, kind of a thing.
Yeah, okay. So this was one of my craziest stories from very early on in my work. Before I knew, I don't know. I didn't know that there could be any limitations on anything, and I just thought I could fix everything. And when you think that, it's basically true, actually. In my experience, this woman in my congregation at church had a severe personality split. She had, now we call it dissociative identity disorder, DID. At the time, it was multiple personality disorder. When I discovered this, I just said, I bet I could fix that. Why don't you just come over and we'll just give it a try? And so we just tried it. And over the course of about 2 hours, we reintegrated 21 parts of her personality. And she said, oh, I'm like integrated now. And I said, oh, great. And it was, so, I mean, I will tell it in a chronological order. So this happens on probably like a Monday or Tuesday. So she goes in to her psychiatrist on Friday, and she goes in and she's like, "Oh, I don't really need you anymore. I'm actually better now. I like don't have multiple personalities anymore." And of course they're like, "Okay, well, that's like impossible, and so you must be like truly crazy." So they try forcibly check her into the mental hospital, and she literally runs away on foot, and she evades their capture and runs out. And so I grew up in Maryland. This took place in Baltimore, which if you know anything about Baltimore, you're like, oh my gosh. So she's on foot running away from the doctors in Baltimore, and this is before Uber. I don't even know how she got home. Anyway, so she finally gets home, and her doctors calm down, and they decide that, okay, well, we're gonna have another meeting with her. So they like meet with her again, and she's like, look, I'm sorry. I've been healed. I've been fully reintegrated. She said, I've been healed through the power of Jesus Christ. And like, I really think that I'm fully healed now. And so they were so shocked. They called up our bishop, the bishop of our congregation, to ask if it's true that Jesus can heal people. Like, is this really possible? Do you really believe this, like, in your church, that, like, you can just, like, be healed like that? And, like, this bishop did not know what they were talking about, but he was like, yeah, sure, okay. And so They ended up doing a bunch of tests on her, and I don't know how they were measuring it, but they said actually, yeah, she appears to no longer have multiple personalities, like in all of our conversations. And she used to split really easily, and she'd split all the time. And there were like certain triggers, and so they'd like put in the triggers, and like she would not split. And when I say it was like very obvious, I mean like one of them was like an infant that would like, cry like a baby. You could tell, you know. And so and it wasn't happening anymore. And they'd been working with her for years and years. And so they would try these triggers. She was not triggering, she was not splitting. So anyway, in the end, one of her medical professionals came to my house to receive training on how to do this method where you reintegrate these different parts. And then our local leader of our congregation at church called me up because he said, "Okay, what happened? Something happened because this person used to have all 17 of her splits call me in succession every night, and all the bishops in this congregation for all these years, they just all knew like if you're the bishop, you're going to get 17 calls in a row every night from every single one of these personalities, and you just take the call or don't take the call, but it's going to happen every night. And you just got to like plan ahead in your life that you're going to get 17 voicemails every night from these 17 personalities." But she stopped calling. The first day that we reintegrated, she just stopped calling. She just said, "Oh, I don't need to do that anymore." And he said, "What have you done? What happened? Like, how is this possible?" So I had to go in and explain myself, which is this whole other story, but I was like very terrified. But I didn't have any reason to be because he just heard what I did and said, "Oh, like I never heard of such a thing, but it appears to have been very effective. So I guess it worked." And so that is the short version of that very crazy story from, I would say that was the first year that I was working in this field.
Wow. Yeah, just so crazy. I know that, I mean, it's just a testament to how strong our brains, our minds can be, especially since that's literally the first year that you were doing this work. And there's been so much more since then in understanding we really can heal ourselves. Like our bodies are meant to heal, we can heal. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I'm happy to hear more experiences. I also was wondering if we could chat just a little bit about this idea of ancestral work and how our ancestors' blocks can come to us. And I guess what we should talk about really is epigenetics when we're talking about this and how that ties into all of this. So in a lot of your work, and I know a lot of people who do energy work, we talk about doing ancestral work. That happens to me in sessions all the time, even if they're astrology sessions. I can see something in someone's chart and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of ancestral work to be done. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. They're like, what does it mean to do ancestral work? And how does that connect to energy work? So do you want to talk a little bit about that? And where does this ancestral work come from? How can your ancestors affect you as a person now? And we can talk about epigenetics if you want.
Yeah. So epigenetics, you have your genome and then you have your epigenome. Epi is like on top of, and it's not your straight up DNA, but it's like a little thing that's on top of it. And we get our epigenetics from kind of a bunch of sources, like how well you slept as a child can impact your epigenome. Or, if you were very scared, you had like a terribly scary experience, it can alter the manifestation of your epigenome. But what they have found is that there's a lot of epigenetic um, stuff that they can track through ancestry. And I wrote about this in a book called Heal Your Ancestors, Heal Yourself, which is available on Amazon. The whole introduction about epigenetics. Some of the studies that they've done, they would take rats and make them smell a certain smell and then shock them so that they associate this smell with terror. And then 5 generations of rats later, where they haven't done that to any rats in between, they give them that smell and their bodies produce the chemicals of terror. Or there have been a lot of papers done on the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors who obviously were not in the Holocaust, but might have dreams that vividly portray their grandparents' experiences in the Holocaust. I always tell this story of how I was always terrified my whole life of top floors of houses. When I was in the top floor of a house, I would always be just absolutely terrified I was going to fall through the floor. So I would never jump. I was never going to do anything crazy on the top floor of a house. No, no, no. And especially not in the bathroom. I was so scared of that. And it was something that really terrified me. I remember being 4 years old and being so scared that I was going to fall through the floor. But the thing that really got me was when I would drive past unfinished houses and they were just like rafters and you could just see the beams of the house. And I would feel incredible terror about this. And I just thought I was crazy and stupid. And I just thought, I don't know why I'm so scared of that, but that's stupid. Well, one day I was driving around with my little son, and he was 3 or 4 years old, and we were driving through an unfinished neighborhood, and we were passing all these houses where you can see the exposed beams and the rafters of these houses. And my little son says to me from his car seat, he says, "Mommy, I feel so scared of those." And that is the moment that I was like, say what? You are scared of those? Like, it's one thing for me to be scared of those, but like, why are you scared of those? Like, you should, no little kid should just like be scared of those. Too weird that he's scared of those when I'm scared of those. Fortunately, I was on the way to go out to lunch with my mother, and I had just been researching about epigenetic trauma and ancestral trauma, and this idea that the experiences of our ancestors can actually lodge in the energy of our genome and be expressed in our bodies even decades later, or possibly even centuries later. So I go out to lunch with my mom, and I'm asking her, I said, "Mom, okay, I just passed this like skeleton house, and my little son said that he was scared of it, but I am scared of it. Like, I'm scared of that house. Is there any story that you know of from our family line that might indicate why I would have this unholy terror of rafters and falling through floors, and like why when I see a house like that, my heart rate is spiking and I feel terror?" My mom laughed and she said, "Oh, I know exactly why you should feel afraid of that. When she was a child, the upstairs bathroom flooded and my beautiful grandpa went in to try and fix it. Well, the floor collapsed underneath him and he landed on the rafter and then was stuck there for 6 hours while they tried to find people to save him. And so the bathroom was destroyed. He had his crotch smashed for 6 hours on this stupid rafter. So then for the next, I don't know, 50 years, his grandchild, had this like, I had no idea why I was scared of it. But as soon as my mom told me that story, I was like, oh my gosh. And so I went into my mind and accessed the energy of that story and breathed through it and kind of breathed out the energy signature that was still associated with that experience and breathed it out for myself and for my little son. And then when we had to drive back through that neighborhood, I noticed that I didn't feel scared anymore. And my little son said, "Oh, Mom, I'm not scared of that anymore." And so there you go. That's my personal experience with that. But every single person alive is carrying the records of their ancestors. Anything that they did not process in their lifetime, it is lodged somewhere in their descendants. Now, not all of us inherit everything from all of our ancestors by any means. And I write about this in my book. I have several siblings, and it's funny because I look very much like one side of my family, and when I go to funerals on that side of the family, there's absolutely no question. Everyone says, "Oh, I know that you belong here." We all look exactly the same. But I have one sibling who does not look anything like this side of the family, and she looks like my dad's side of the family. And when she's around, there's absolutely no question, like, yes, she goes with that side of the family. And what I have found in working on myself, working on my siblings, is that the genetic trauma that I carry comes from the line that I actually look like. And the epigenetic trauma that my sister seems to carry actually comes from that whole other side of the family. And she doesn't really carry a lot from the one side, and I don't really carry a lot from the other side. So I do think that you can look at your own body and see the genetics of your body, and that can be kind of a good indicator of where much of your own epigenetic issues may come from. On that note, I always get questions from people who have been adopted, asking if they are carrying unresolved energy from their adopted families. And so I'm here to say, no, that's not really a thing in what I have observed. It is genetic and biological. This is a biological phenomenon more so than a spiritual phenomenon. It is spiritual, but it's linked to the physical body, which I think makes sense because your spirit is linked to your physical body. That's what makes us alive, is that our spirit and bodies are linked. There is a connection between your spirit and your genetics, your spirit and your phenotype, your expression of how your genes are actually showing up and how they are making your hair show up, how they are making your body show up. There is a true and real connection there, and it is biological. So even if you are adopted, the chances are highest that you are expressing it, to the extent that you're dealing with inherited trauma, that is going to be strictly biological, and the work that your adoptive parents might do on themselves is not really going to necessarily be that helpful for you. Like, you will have to do the work to clear out the trauma from your own genetic lines. But again, how much trauma that you express per genetic line, it will be different person to person. And so, like, I was very terrified of falling through floors. My little brother never expressed such a terror. I don't think he ever dealt with that. We all deal with different aspects of stuff from the family line that needs to be cleared out. And sometimes it'll be multiple people in a family, and we've all seen that, where maybe an example coming to mind is like hoarding, where you have somebody in the family line that's a hoarder, and then you see either hoarding tendencies trickle down through the line, or, you know, the visceral anti-hoarding tendencies also trickling through the family line. It kind of just depends situation to situation how exactly it shows up. Whatever you personally do to clear this stuff out of the family tree, when you are using your own body as the mechanism to process this, like I said, you kind of access the energy of the event and you like breathe through it. And I talk about how to do this in that book. All of my sessions guide you right through it, so it's very easy and intuitive and seamless, and you don't really have to think too hard about it. But as you do this process, when you are clearing it out from the family line above you, my understanding is that it also clears it out from everybody that was affected. Say a trauma comes up that originated with your great-great-grandmother, you feel it, you process it, you use your own body to metabolize the actual emotions involved. You will literally cry them out. You will breathe them out. Your lungs create neuropeptides that break apart the chemical bonds of these emotions, and you breathe it out when you're taking your deep breaths. Okay, you're gonna pee these things out. That's why you gotta stay very well hydrated when you do this kind of work, because water is both a conductor of electricity, so it makes the work more effective, but also we gotta flush out the physical chemicals involved. So you clear this out from your great-great-grandmother. Well, all of your great-great-grandmother's descendants who were dealing with this are likely to also just magically feel better for no reason. They won't know what you have done, but what many of my clients have reported, and in my own experience, you know, you do this ancestral work and you just see some interesting trickle-down effects from clearing that from the family line. You see that many family members may suddenly just stop doing that old habit. They don't even know why they were doing it in the first place, actually, and now they just don't care about that anymore, you know, or they will suddenly be open to something that they were very closed about before. One of my favorite things about this work is that you really don't have to take anybody's word for it. You know, like, I can talk about it all day, but you can also just try it and see for yourself that you feel different and that your family acts differently, you know, which is what I love, is that none of us have to take anybody's word about any of it. You can just do a little experiment for yourself. And I know on a religious level, so I am personally very religious, and I know a lot of religious people that are very against this kind of thing. I think partially because they don't really understand it, but some of them really feel like they do understand it and they feel like it is evil. And my big feeling on it is that God is the ultimate arbiter of what is good and true and what is good for you and what is helpful for you. And so for myself, I always just feel like every day, if I just wake up and connect with my creator and do my best to listen closely to what I feel is the Holy Spirit and my own intuition, if I'm following that every day, and I ask God specifically, like, don't let me mess up. Don't let me make a huge mistake. If I can ask, like, you know, is it okay if I just like give this a little try? And if it's not right for me, will you tell me? And if it is right for me, will you tell me? And, you know, we work together with God to find out the right thing for us. I'm not going to say that I think that this is the right thing for everybody to try. I think that for some people, they're going to be happier not trying this kind of thing. That's fine. You know, if you're listening to this and being like, this is bonkers and insane and possibly evil, you know what? That's part of your journey too. And I'm okay with it. I've certainly had a lot of people say a lot of things about me that aren't always very nice, but that's okay because everybody is on their own journey. And the one thing that I really believe is that God's children deserve the best of everything. So a couple of years ago, I got pneumonia. I went running in wildfire smoke like an idiot. I didn't know it was smoky. I went out before the sun had really come up, although that should have been my first clue because it actually had come up, but it was so smoky that it wasn't clear that it had come up. But anyways, I ran for 1/10 of a mile and gave myself a massive lung damage in that 10 minutes that I was outside in this smoke. And I ended up going to the hospital, getting all of these IV antibiotics and everything like that. And guess what? No shame. It saved my life, and I'm glad that I did it. And we can have the best of all worlds, and we don't have to pick and choose. I am a big believer in natural remedies. I'm a big believer in herbs. I'm a big believer in energy work. And I'm not above going to the hospital for IV antibiotics for a week when I need that too. I think that we can pick and choose what kind of medical interventions we want in our lives. We can team up with our creator to make exactly the right choices for us. And we're allowed to try some of this and try some of that and say, I do like this and I don't like that. And we're allowed to change our minds over time. There was a time in my life where I said, I will never take any antibiotics again. And guess what? Then when I was at death's door, I said, well, actually, maybe antibiotics are actually okay sometimes. And then I took them. So guess what? We're allowed to do the best of whatever it is that is available to us. So if this is something that you're interested in looking into a little further, then I hope that you do and just team up with your higher power to make sure that you're in alignment with whatever you try. And if it feels like something that, this is a little too weird for me, guess what? I honor that too. And I think that the most important thing is listening to yourself, listening to your own body, listening to your creator, your higher power, to make sure that whatever you choose to do in your life is in alignment with your path. And you are the ultimate authority on what you do with your own life. So that's what I have to say about that.
I love it. I love that. That's a beautiful place to wrap up and wraps up what I was going to talk about, which was this kind of spiritual interface and how people, like we said, sometimes don't feel aligned or think it's woo-woo, even though there is lots of science behind all of this, what we're talking about, what Allie does. And I do think most of our listeners are probably just fine trying it out, but I do think that's a great caveat. And that's the whole point, is we are able to choose. Also, I love that it's demonstrable. You can demonstrate it. You can try it for yourself. It's easy to try. Like Allie has a bunch of free stuff too, you guys. You can go onto her website, try stuff for free, see how you feel about it. If people are still having questions, because many of you might be feeling like, even though Allie explained a little bit of how the ancestral stuff can work and how the visualizations can work, it can still feel overwhelming. Where do I start if I do want to work with the ancestral or the epigenetic stuff that has been passed down to me? Allie has great work for that. She has great stuff to help you with that. If you're like, I don't even know where to start, I don't remember, I'm adopted, whatever it is, there is help for you on her website. But I would just say, to wrap up, maybe we should give people 2 practical tools that they could walk away with. And I was thinking about talking about tapping and scribbling, if you want to talk about those 2 things real quick, because you're a big proponent of those. And then we can wrap up this wonderful podcast.
Yeah. So first, I'll remind you that we talked about how to use our hands to flow that energy. And I hope that you practice it. And I hope as you lay down in bed before you fall asleep, you do put your hands right over your eyes. It's called palming. And you just palm your eyes and breathe for a few minutes and feel the tension leave your eyes so you can have this beautiful, restful sleep. Yes, go try it. Go try scanning your own body. And if you have a friend with maybe like a bad knee or something, go practice flowing that energy over their knee and see how it goes. I love tapping. We could probably do a whole episode just on tapping, but tapping and scribbling, both of those are so good. But you may have heard of EFT tapping. I just do a really simplified version of it because with the fancy kind, you have all sorts of different points that you're supposed to tap on. And I do not do that. I just am too lazy for that, frankly. I tap on my forehead or on my collarbone, or I'll tap on my knees or on my hands. I'll tap anywhere, but I don't do a whole protocol. What you will do is choose the affirmation that you are trying to embody, and you just tap on yourself and speak it out loud. So you want to have a happier life. You can just say, I am living my happiest life today. And you just tap it in and say it a few times. I love that because we're harnessing the power of rhythm. And your entire body functions on these rhythms. We could really talk about this for like quite a long time, but very short version. Your heartbeat, all the rhythms of your body, you are creating a new rhythm when you are doing that tapping and inviting your whole body to sync to a new rhythm as you are using your brain and your rest of your body to speak forth a new kind of reality. And if you want to supercharge it, I like to imagine my old beliefs getting slurped out of my brain like spaghetti, and I imagine little cursive being written in my brain while I tap, and it will just say like, I'm living my happiest life right now, and it's like writing that into my brain, and it feels really good. Go ahead and make a list of 10 affirmations, things that you want in your life, and speak them as if you already have them and just tap them in. And you can tap them in over and over. I always say do it at least 3 times per affirmation, but that is a great way to start rewiring your brain. Scribbling, I also wrote an entire book about scribbling called The Scribbling Solution. And the very short version of that is that all trauma is energetic in nature. This also has to do with Einsteinian understandings of mass versus energy and how energy can be kind of like amorphous, or it can be kind of like concentrated and become more physical. Okay, so what you do is you take the energy of a situation. I recommend a small one because all trauma has mass. In my opinion, it all has mass, it has size. And so when you think about your different traumas in your life that you need to resolve, I want you to think of your lifetime of being abused as a child versus you stubbed your toe the other day. The stubbed toe is going to be this big, and the lifetime of abuse is going to be this big. So you choose a small thing to scribble on and not a big thing. If you try to scribble out something the size of Canada, it is going to take you 10 years, and you don't want to open that can of worms. Do not do it. You scribble on tiny things. You could scribble on this one experience, and you imagine the energy of that experience gathering together in yourself and then going through your body, down your arm, into your hand, into a crayon or a pen or whatever, and then you scribble it out on paper, and you will find that your body does its own thing. It will do its own movements, and as it does that, you'll feel the waves of emotion from this event flow through you. Sometimes you might cry or feel really frustrated, or your heart might elevate, but you scribble it out until it's done, and then when it's done, you create kind of like this oval shape, like an empty vortex, and that's how you close it up. And you can force that empty vortex if it doesn't come naturally. It will come naturally if you scribble long enough. It's the weirdest thing, but you try it, you will see for yourself. It will come naturally if you complete the removal of energy that way. But if you don't have time for that, you can just close it up by making that empty vortex shape. So I have some videos on YouTube explaining it. If you go in there, I have a bunch of scribbling tutorials in there that are very helpful because you can scribble out massive energies, but you just have to kind of chop them up first. You gather all that energy first, and then you kind of like smash it up and then kind of partition it off into little Ziploc baggies of trauma. And then you just like take one little baggie and you just scribble out that one tiny baggie for 5 minutes and then work one at a time until you get it done over a course of weeks or months, rather than try and do it all at once, which is very overwhelming to the system. But I love scribbling because it's an easy way to shift energy very fast. And I'm going to tell you a really quick story and then we'll be done because I know I've been talking for a really long time. But the other day, so I have my son who has been a little belligerent about being forced to play the piano, which I'm sorry, if you are my child, you are going to be spending some time at the piano. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry. And he was being a real jerk about it. And I thought, I wonder how much of this is just trapped energy that I can just clear. So I sat down and I wrote down like belligerence about the piano on the top of my paper, and I took 5 minutes. I asked myself, how long will it take to scribble out the total energy here that is leading to these big outbursts about the piano? I got 30 minutes. So that's just the number that came into my mind. You can ask, how long will it take me to scribble this out? A number may come into your mind, and that is a pretty good number to work with. I didn't have 30 minutes. I had 5 minutes. So I said, I'm going to work on 5 minutes of this belligerent energy. Scribbled it out. Got to the empty vortex shape, and then I ripped up my paper and threw it away. Then I went back to my own business, and maybe an hour later, my son came to me. He had found some sheet music on the internet for a song that he liked, and he asked if I wouldn't mind sitting down at the piano with him and explaining what all these little shapes mean on the side of it, because he's still a middle C position kind of guy, and this is in 5 flats. So he's like, what are these shapes? So I'm like, okay, let's go sit down. But then it was not my idea. It was his idea. And now he's been practicing every day and he's finding his own music. And I don't know. And I didn't even bother with the rest of the 25 minutes of piano belligerence. I don't think that this forced him to like the piano. I don't think this was a mind control situation. It's more that there was an energy of stress around. And I decided that I was going to use scribbling to clear it out. And then once it was clear, then that stress wasn't there. And then it was easy. Guess what? Children of mine like music. It's just their genetic destiny. It's their epigenetics. So they have to love it. I just know their love for the music is in there. And so just removing their fight against it seems to open up a whole bunch of, more fun. We've had a lot more fun, and it's not a fight anymore. So this is a fun technique to use for a lot of things. My book talks about how to use it for weight loss, how to use it for knee pain, how to use it for emotional stuff, how to use it with your family, how to use it in your relationships. So there's a lot of applications, and they're all fun. All of it is just extremely fun and so easy. So I hope you go try it because it will change your life.
Yes, it will. And it's so funny because when Allie and I talk and I tell her my problems, she's always like, did you scribble it out? Have you scribbled on it yet? Have you done the scribbling? And I'm like, oh, fine. Yes, I need to go scribble on it, but it always really helps me. And I did want to point out that that stress with your son playing the piano is also a stress between the two of you too. And a lot of times that's part of the reason this works with kids so well is even if they don't scribble on it and you scribble on it, usually the tension is between the two of you. And so releasing that block from your side can make their side so much easier to work with and to work with them. And I will also add my testament that with scribbling, if you take on something that's too big, it will take you forever because I have scribbled on something for 45 minutes. Like I have had to do that before when I have taken things on, and the circle definitely comes, but it can take you a long time. So just make sure you're choosing something, like Allie said, ask how much time it will take and that you're choosing something manageable or breaking up something manageable because it can take a lot of time. But scribbling has really helped me. Tapping, I will always be a huge proponent of tapping. Like you said, we could do a whole episode on it, but I think this has been such an amazing overview of energy work, how it works, your work, like a lecture for people to understand all of these pieces. So thank you for sharing so much with us and being here and just like giving so much and showing your beautiful face, which is always so fun to see, and let people know where they can find you.
Oh yeah, so my website is called AllieDuzettClasses.com, and if you search for me, Allie Duzett, it should just come up AllieDuzett with no E on the end. Everyone wants to add an E on the end because it looks so pretty, but I don't get that extra E, guys. It ends with a T. I run the Intuitive Healing with Allie Duzett Facebook group, which is so fun, and we talk about all this stuff all day long, and you will make such amazing friends in that group. And I also have a YouTube channel where we talk about this kind of stuff, and it's just under my name as well, Allie Duzett. So yeah, come on board, come hang out. I want to hang out with you. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Thanks for being here. Always a pleasure to be with you. All right, everyone, we'll see you next week.